Okay, it's day 78, and if I'm honest, we are talking about something today that is my least favorite section of Matthew. It's the Olivet Discourse, which is seemingly all about the end of the world. And I don't know about you, but I don't really know much about the end of the world. In fact, in what we're going to read today, Jesus even says he doesn't know much about the end of the world. So how can we be expected to understand everything that he's talking about? A lot of what I believed about the end of times early on in my Christian life came from a book series you probably have at least heard of, the Left Behind series, which, if we're honest, is not really a good indicator of what you should believe about what the end of the world will look like. And so what I want to do in this two-part series is share with you something that when I read this all at once, when we were preparing for these videos, I noticed this and it made everything just a little bit easier to grasp. And it made this long section of very confusing parables come together for me in a way that I hadn't seen before. And I hope it will be helpful for you too. So it's a two-parter, and what we're going to do today is set up this whole section and talk about one of the parables, and then we'll talk about the second parable tomorrow. So here's where we're starting. In Matthew 24, we're backing up just a little bit from today's reading. Look at verse 44. Jesus is talking about how will you know when the end of times is coming. And he says, therefore, you must also be ready. He says a lot of other things, but this is what I think is the most important. Therefore, you must also be ready. Be ready. For the Son of Man is coming in an hour you do not expect. You're not going to know when it's going to happen, so you have to be ready. So what does it mean to be ready? Well, luckily, Jesus tells us what it means to be ready. Who then, in verse 45, is the faithful and wise servant whom his master has set over his household to give them food at the proper time? Did you catch that? What are the two words that Jesus uses to describe the servant that is ready? Faithful and wise. And wouldn't you know it, that the next two parables Jesus is going to talk about, these words are repeated over and over again. So in the parable of the 10 virgins, what word do you see? Literally, the whole parable is about comparing two types of people, foolish and wise. He's talking about these 10 young women, these 10 virgins they're called, and 5 of them are called foolish and 5 of them are called wise. And then in the story we'll talk about tomorrow, the parable of the talents, you'll see another word repeated over and over again. It's all about the faithful servant. What does the faithful servant look like? So when we look at this section all together, the end of the Olivet Discourse that we're in the middle of, I think it's telling us, what does it mean to be ready for when Jesus does eventually come back? It means two things, to be faithful and to be wise. And so again, today we're going to talk about the parable of the 10 virgins, which I think is all about what does it mean to be wise. And there are two things that I think we can pull from this that help us understand a little more about that picture of the wise servant. So here's the setup to the parable. Jesus tells them the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. They're going to a wedding. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. Which one do you want to be like, right? This is what Jesus is saying. Don't you want to be like the wise one? So pay attention. What do? For when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. They're prepared. Basically, a lamp, a torch, like what they would be using here, that doesn't have oil to come with it to keep it burning, is like a flashlight with no batteries. It is useless. It's going to burn up like that, and then it's not going to help you at all. You're not ready if you don't have the oil that comes with the lamp. And as the bridegroom was delayed, all of them became drowsy and fell asleep. So there's nothing wrong with them being asleep. All the ones, the foolish and the wise, fall asleep because it's a long time before the bridegroom comes, before it's time for the wedding. But at midnight there was a cry, and here is the bridegroom, come out to meet him. And so all the virgins rose and they trimmed their lamps. They got them ready. They lit the fires. But the foolish said to the wise, it's like they realize, oh crud, we don't have what we need. We're not prepared. And so they say to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going to go out. But the wise answered, since there will be not enough for us and for you, go buy some for yourselves. And here's an important lesson. What this parable is talking about is spiritual maturity, being ready, being wise for when the bridegroom comes at an unexpected hour, living your life in a way that means being prepared for that time, even if it's delayed, which it's been a long time since Jesus was here. It's been delayed. And what we learn from this one sentence, go buy some for yourselves. This kind of wisdom is not something that you can get from someone else. Being prepared is not something that someone else can do for you. You have to do it for yourself. And here's the second thing. This kind of preparedness and readiness is not something that can happen last minute either. It's not something that the girls can go buy for themselves, because look what happens. While they were going to buy it, they're going last minute to the store. Some of you can relate. I'm a last minute person myself, but they're going last minute to the dealers, and the bridegroom comes while they're there. And those who were ready, they went in. Those who were prepared at this moment, they're able to enter into the wedding feast. And this wedding feast is the highlight of the ceremony. If you miss this, you miss the whole wedding. It's like you've missed everything. And the door was shut, is what Jesus says. And afterward, the other virgins, the 5 foolish ones who weren't prepared, they come to the door, Lord, Lord, open it to us. And Jesus answers them, truly I tell you, I don't know you. And then we get this last minute warning, watch therefore, for you know neither the day nor the hour that the bridegroom is coming. And so again, readiness is something that can't be done last minute, and it's not something that someone else can do for you. And that's the picture of this parable. It's Jesus warning his followers, you're not going to know when the last days, whatever they'll look like, you're not going to know. And it may be a long time. And it's okay to lay down and sleep as long as you're prepared. And so what I get from this is you can take a breath, you can relax, and you don't have to live your life awake and, at the door, like at the window, waiting to see when the bridegroom will come if you're ready. If you're living a life that is wise and being prepared. This wisdom means taking it upon yourself to do what needs to be done to be ready. And it means not waiting until the last minute, but living your whole life as if you're ready for the time when Jesus will come back. And again, tomorrow, this continues, this idea of what does it mean to be ready, being faithful and wise. We just talked about what it means to be wise. And tomorrow we'll talk about what does it mean to be faithful. And that, I think, will give us a whole picture of what Jesus is trying to tell us when it comes to the end time. He's not worried about giving us sign for sign for sign about what will happen. He chose this time to tell his followers, his disciples, and all who would come after, including us, be prepared. And here's what it means. Be faithful and be wise. We'll keep talking about this tomorrow. I hope to see you there.